Andrew Gouché is a world-renowned bassist, musical director, producer, and composer. He's worked with some of the biggest names in the industry and created tunes we've all grooved to. Now he's released his debut project titled We Don't Need No Bass. Please welcome Andrew Gouché.
Hey.
How are you, sir?
Very good. Honored to be here.
I want to set you a task. I mean, you're a veteran in doing difficult things with riffs, but how about this one? My name is, and you have to try and pronounce it, Oluwalumwele Adebayo Olariwaju Sholomo Ntinjogwonla.
That's harder than any song I've ever played in my life. So, I'm just going to call you sir.
You know, some people just call me Jeff.
Right.
In London, oi! You know?
Yeah.
But you have your own CD, but let's talk about your journey in music. I mean, over 4 decades of making music. Yeah. I'm intrigued. Tell us some of the songs that we know that, and you don't have to tell us the church ones, you know.
Well, you know, it's funny because when people ask me that and I start hearing myself talking, I go, okay, you must be lying. You didn't do all that stuff, you know. The bigger things, like I actually sung on Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror.
Nice.
But I started out, and I like to talk about where I started. I was in the choir at Reverend James Cleveland's church in the 70s. That's where I started. And I saw, when I was 14, I saw Larry Graham from Graham Central Station on Soul Train. And I asked my mother to get me a bass. And she got me a bass for Christmas. And James, at that time, his bass player lived in New York. I live in Los Angeles, and his church was in LA. And so James used to let me sit over on the side and try to figure out the songs, you know. So I always like to give him credit. But I started out playing with James Cleveland in the 70s. And
so you learned your music by ear?
Totally by ear.
Wow. But let me ask you though, were you ever tempted to go the voice as an instrument? Because you've got an incredible voice.
Well, it's funny. I started out as a singer. But what happened was I started, you know, I was blessed to start working with some of the greatest singers in the industry. So I was like, I don't need to sing. I'm around all these great singers. So I stopped. I literally stopped singing. And, you know, I was playing with Andraé and James and the Hawkins family. And
you say Andraé like is the man next door. You're talking about the legendary Andraé Crouch.
Andraé Crouch, yeah.
Now, but let me ask you though, how do you go from a kid who just liked music and then wanted to play an instrument and stumble on the bass to playing with all these great names? Because when you go on Google and put your name in, all these names come up from Kirk Franklin to Michael Jackson to all of them. How did that happen?
You know, I remember when I was a kid, I was wondering, you know, I wasn't good at sports, and I was wondering what I was meant to do, you know, and literally playing bass changed my life. When I found the bass guitar, within a year I was doing gigs, and it just came natural to me. And I remember, and I always give my mom credit, because I remember being in the house making all this horrible noise on the bass, but she never made me stop because she saw how enthusiastic and determined I was. And literally within a year I was doing gigs. And I think a lot of it in music is being in the right place at the right time. I was born in LA, so I grew up in LA, so I was around the music scene. I didn't have to make that migration to LA like a lot of people.
But you know, for you, let me ask about your Jesus story, because of course when people talk about music, rock and roll, they always talk about it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But here you are, you have a testimony of Jesus. Where did he fit on that journey, and did you have moments where you lost sight and found him again? Tell us more.
Yeah, there were certain things that, because I was never a person that could be talked into doing something. I never followed a crowd. I was not a joiner, that even when I saw things, I just knew I didn't want to do that. But I didn't get saved until Manpower 1996. And I was playing, I was in church and doing all that stuff. My mother was a keyboard player, singer in church. My grandfather was a pastor. But so I knew how to look, you know, and act.
Right.
But I went to Manpower in 97 it was, and that's when my whole life changed.
But now your CD, We Don't Need No Bass, you capture, I can only imagine, over 40 years
Yes,
of
yes,
experience, of
yes.
emotions, and your found faith on that CD.
Yeah, that CD is literally a bunch of moments from my life's experiences, you know. Starting out with James Cleveland, the song that I'm gonna play, I Don't Feel No Ways Tired, was a James Cleveland song that I actually...
Nobody told me the road would be easy.
Yes, yes. And I recorded that song with James in '83.
Wow.
And
But hold on, you're mentioning all these names, but you look about 33 yourself. How is it that you worked with all these people and you're so young?
well, my oldest son is 37.
Jehovah.
And
Just tell, whatever it is you drink, I'll have a couple of boxes of that. Take it back to London with me.
you know, it's just, I really feel, you ever notice you can tell the difference between saved people and people of the world? They look fresher, they don't look as worn, and I don't know. I never drank, I never smoked, I never did any of that stuff.
Wow.
And so I think that has something to do with it.